There's a couple things that recommending to someone what they need to think about. This place I would start is assessing your internal capability. So that's looking internally within your department. So if that's an IT department, then looking internally. So what do your colleagues in your own department say does? Different types of BAs. You could have pure BAs that are purely business focused, generalists, or business system analyst / functional analyst. So does everyone in your own department understand what a BA does, and that there's differences, what those differences mean, and who has specialisms in those different types of roles? So BAs do you have? So understanding what their skills are and strengths and weaknesses, that's kind of bog standard stuff for managers. How skilled are your team? So what are their strengths, or what are they particularly skilled at, whether it's process design, workshop facilitation, research engineering? Because I'm surprised if you're going to get someone who's completely well-rounded in all those skill sets. And how much experience do they have? So you may have someone who has a lot of skill, but a lot of experience, or may have these who have a lot of experience and not a lot of skills, and hopefully it's the former rather than the latter. What tools and methods are going to be using internally to work? So what tools do you have available, budget to buy, what software, etc. These are the tips and suggestions for how to I guess the challenges that you face. So with regards to the different types of BA roles, is make sure that there's a shared understanding of the distinct attributes of the BA. So that could be done at a team meeting, or it could circulate something to say, this is the profile of my team, and these are the things that they're good at. Those are my tips and suggestions. Sorry, that came up late. I always recommend internal work shadowing. So if you've got a completely new team, I do work shadowing amongst the other team. So I have somebody work shadow someone in networks or service desk, and otherwise they come in and work shadow your team, because it's a big eye opener, and it creates relationships, which is never hurts. What I've been doing, and what I did both at UAL and what I'm currently doing at C, is running skill sessions. If easier for me to do that because I have a background in business analysis. It might be more challenging if you don't, but need to find somebody either within your team or externally to run these sessions. So requirements engineering, workshop facilitation, and process design are the three ones. There's also like soft skills. You can like how to deal with difficult voices, how to run an agile project, those type of things. So there's different skills, but they're useful to have when you're trying to internally bed your new team. And offer those out to those sessions to people within your department if you want them to really understand what your role is as a BA. And having the right toolkit so that you're consistently producing professional documentation and using the right tool for the job. And I really focus on this because when you're working internally as a team and across an institution, if your documentation doesn't look consistently good, people engage with it, especially where you're using the same people across different projects or different types of work. So important that it looks good, basically, and that it looks similar, so that if you have a non-related person coming that was working for you, they're going to recognize a swim lane diagram of what project they're on. I'm also added in there, use the right tool for the right job. So I've seen, for example, UL used where in diagramming, where you're showing it to business users who have neither an interest in it or in it, and it's just difficult to look at. But that's my about UL, sorry. And communicate. So always underestimate how much communication you have to do internally. Because I've worked in IT departments where even within IT, even the senior team within IT really didn't understand what your BAs do. So it's always important to raise the profile of your team internally. Making sure that you're good at within organizations and making a name for yourself. Some of the things you need to consider, the challenges that you face, are the level of understanding of the role within the institution. So the role within IT wasn't really understood. They didn't have that role, although they did have BAs in different parts of the institution, like the registry. So it's doing a sense check about what do you think the role is understood internally. Being aware and realizing that perception that the business analyst may not that valued, or they think it's doing something it isn't. So both comments that have been looked at me over my life as a BA are, the business analyst is going to come in, do some analysis, and then leave. That was a good one. IT shouldn't be telling the business how to do their job. Just adding bureaucracy, don't Prince 2 me. So whereas Prince 2 is not about business analysis, it can be. People like to label that because they know what Prince 2 is, and you're coming in and potentially adding a layer of complexity to the projects. And then it's identifying the barriers and blockers. So that's the standard kind of change management typing. Who thinks on your side, and who do you think is, and do you feel threatened that you are going to bring a BA into your project, into their project or their work? My suggestion is, and I'm probably missing my animation. There we go. Tips and suggestions is that the business analyst is the most important role on project team. People think it's the project manager, but I think the BA is the glue that holds the project together. Your person sits between your user and your technical IT person that does the translation. They have to speak two languages. So they have to speak business language and have to be able to speak technical language, potentially, if that's what the role of the project requires. The BA also has to be pretty savvy and be able to calm ruffled feathers. They're usually the person that gets the call when someone's upset about how requirements have been displayed or prioritized. So to me, they're really important. And I think you need to continuously raise the profile of that within your institution. And work shadowing, I can't say that enough. Work shadowing is a very positive tool for making sure that across an institution that isn't that familiar with this analysis, that get to see what you do as a business analyst, and you get to understand what your customers may be facing on a day-to-day, especially if you're in an HE before. Start small if you possibly can to demonstrate benefits. So it's a completely new team. If you could on small projects or smaller pieces of work rather than a big system and implementation, because not just demonstrating what the goal is without getting into a highly complex, risk-heavy project. Use different techniques to get the same result. So don't just follow from interviews to workshops to surveys. Try different techniques to do the same thing, because then you're keeping people's interest and it's making it more interesting as the business analyst. And communicate, always communicate about, this is about the role and about the project. So making sure as the manager of the business analyst that you're communicating with your colleagues across the institution to why they're doing a good job. But hopefully that's the case. So I'm sure it is. Avoid BA jargon. There's lots of IT jargon out there, and there's lots of jargon in business analysis land. So avoid using it for frontline users. nothing turns off then a term they don't know or don't really want to know about. So speak in plain English as much as you can. And lastly, create a form or a practice and invite the business. So we did this at the University of the Arts before I left. We did a community of practice. We did all the similar things that I did at Ariel. That's where I thought of early idea, I should say. And we invited analysts across the institution into that, and it had some success. It wasn't a rip-roaring success, but it was really good to understand. Like, you can't have the same job title, but you're doing different things. But you get to know each other, and you get to come to a shared understanding that you kind of have the same challenges day to day. And for anyone who's in London-based institution that would like to start a cross-institution BA forum with me, I would love to hear from you. And does anybody have any questions? I am really pressed for time, so I have another meeting, but I'm happy to take any questions that anyone has. Or not.
Well, thank you very much, Melanie. I'm sure there might be some questions later on, and I can forward those to you, and maybe you'd be able to answer them via mailing list. I'm sorry for anybody that's had issues with sound. I think there was some of us could hear and some of us couldn't, so hopefully everybody can hear now. And I'm going to pass over to Sarah from the University of Oxford. Thank you. Hello?
Yeah, my screen, Sarah.
No.
No, okay, I'll just do something else. It earlier, I can't remember. What did I do, Sarah, to share the screen earlier on?
There should be an option in Quick Start in the middle of the screen.
Oh, yeah, on that. Can you see it now?
Yes.
See the Oxford flyer?
Yes.
Okay, I'm ready to go. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Head of Business Analysis and Business Change at the University of Oxford. I've been here about 8 years, and I started off as a project manager. I've got previous experience working as a business analyst in other organisations as well. I'll give you some background on the way we're set up here and the size of the team. We're the Programme Project Delivery Group, PCMG, within IT Services. Within IT Services, there's about 350 staff, but within PCMG, there's 60 working on projects in different roles. We have 84 live projects at the moment, and at least 40 in the pipeline, waiting to be done, waiting in the wings. It's quite a sizable operation. It's grown over the last 3 years. We've had to reorganise really to cope with that. So we run matrix management, and this I think works quite well. So I thought this was worth sharing. That our doctor has split the group into a project delivery side, which is on the right-hand side there, and project services. Now, all the management takes place in the project services area. So you're Head of Business Analysis with 40 BAs, including a BA manager. I also manage 2 business change managers and training teams. There's portfolio management, who manages the PO and 15 PMs, and then head of testing, who's got 6 testers, and he's in quite a lot of contract resource. So we are managers of all the project resources. The delivery side is run by 6 program managers, so they don't have direct line management responsibility, but they do have responsibility for the delivery of our projects. And they're 6 because that splits into the 6 IT boards that we have as means of governing different areas like education, research, libraries, etc. In 2013, my role was brought in to manage the BAs as a community of practice. Before that, each BA had really been managed by the project manager who they were working with. So there was a good team, an experienced team, but there wasn't a pool of expertise under one manager. So I brought in to manage that team and also to promote the discipline itself. And I think that's an important part of the role, to make sure it's used appropriately on all of our projects. And I'll go into that in a bit more detail in a minute. These themselves looking to me for support and mentoring, and also to ensure common working practices. They were quite disparate on disparate projects. People were doing it in different ways. They were generally doing things very well, but we needed to have some common working practices and templates, share good practice, and I found that I was often a sounding board, that they needed to come and talk to me about issues on the project. And sometimes just needed reassurance. No, go with your instincts, you're doing the right thing. You can turn to your project manager on that point, perhaps, or etc. So there was also a common point of reference for project managers. So that was a bit of a challenge for them. They needed to come to me to get resource for projects before you collar somebody light in the kitchen, perhaps, and before you knew it, they were working on their project. So they start coming to me. I was the resource manager for the whole team, and I have to allocate the people on assignments, and also utilisation of our targets, because we do charge them from our capital plan, and all our project resources do time each week. In a nutshell, I look back actually and I found that this was how I described my role when I started in 2013. So you could use 4 areas: people management, projects. So I was involved in scoping and assessing projects initially to define BA input. Promoted, that was a very important part of the role. And I also did some strategy work on our IT strategy and data architecture methodology. So it's a very interesting role, very varied. Initial challenges. Looking back, this is so well embedded now that we have testers and we have business analysts and the 2 very separate roles. But at the time I took over the role, they were also doing testing, and they were getting very frustrated. They were often stuck on projects where there was ongoing errors and they had to retest. They could be stuck for months in this phase. And of course, their valuable skills in requirements analysis were being used. It was getting sort of locked into projects that were wrong. So at the time, we had a testing manager start and was growing his team, and he also wanted to promote the principles of good testing, but it was a professional discipline, just I wanted to for business analysis. It was very easy for us to come to an agreement that only testers test, and we managed to sell that to our senior management and our project management and methodology. And that very well, it's just not even questioned anymore. The days were very relieved, some of them, that they could actually get on with what they saw as the proper part of their job. Another challenge I had was explaining the importance of business analysis. Why do you BA? So we did this in all areas, but there was definitely a view in some areas of our organisation that anyone could do analysis, or it wasn't necessary to run requirements because we know what we want and you're just in the way. And this view was actually quite prevalent in IT services itself. So I had quite a big task in meeting people and explaining what actually a business analyst does, how they add value. End users or other technical staff writing requirements, and with limited success, I'd say, because they kind of felt that if they went and met with somebody and just wrote down what they said, they had requirements. There was no sort of analysis going into it, structuring the information, looking at what might be conflicting requirements, things like that a business analyst would do as a normal part of the job. Or they were going straight to a solution and bypassing requirements completely, and that, of course, always comes back to bite you later. So a series of presentations explaining exactly what a business analyst does, why the work of requirements management is so important in ensuring that the solution meets business needs and, at the end of the day, delivers benefits. I've still done that presentation occasionally. I've got some slides from it just at the end to show you the kind of points I was making. And I made sure that I met with every new PM, because we had quite a growth in the number of staff, as I've mentioned. So we have an induction meeting with every new PM to explain the role of the team and how to work with us. That's very important. The challenge, I think, probably for all of us, is resourcing. We did in the approved capital budget that we had, which was great. There was a big demand for IT change, and that meant that we needed 4 additional business analysts to keep on. However, I was only allowed to offer fixed-term contracts, not permanent. So it didn't always. I've been out a few times with a few recruitment drives. I've brought in some very good people, but it's not easy when you're only allowed to offer fixed term. We do supplement with contractors, and this again, you can have mixed results. And what I've learned is that it's not just analysis skills we're looking for here. Certainly, an organisation like ours, which is quite confident, very devolved, excellent skills are required, and working in large, complex organisations doesn't have to be higher education, I don't think, but it's not just your technical BA skills. So building relationships with good recruitment agencies, I found has been very important because they understand the kind of people that I'm looking for. Resource allocation is always a problem because resource requirements are constantly changing. Projects change and suddenly or something doesn't get approved or what have you. So needed to build good relationships with the project managers and encourage them to keep me updated when things do change, because I don't think to do that. We're saying what the BAs themselves thought as becoming part of the team, you have to sell it to them. Well, they really enjoyed being part of the team and being the professionals. They felt it gave them more credibility, I think. And although, again, still worked on separate projects and didn't necessarily come together that often, I ran a monthly BA community meeting, and we would have topics of interest. And they felt that it raised the profile. Just having a business analysis manager, they felt raised the profile of business analysis itself. It would have felt like it was an add-on to projects. I think they liked that I was able to give them more objective advice than the project manager. So we worked in both roles. I'm not driven by project delivery deadlines. So as I say, sometimes I was able to say to them, no, you are doing the right thing. Or had you thought of doing it this way, that might work. And because I knew what everyone else was working on, I was able to make linkages between projects. So I was able to say, oh, so-and-so's just done that. Go and speak to them. They'll be able to give tips, or they've just dealt with that group of people, that group of stakeholders. I just share a few slides on what I did to promote business analysis. I first explained what it was. I think this is straight off Wikipedia probably, but I picked out the 3 key words or 4. It's about enabling change by defining and recommending solutions that deliver value to stakeholders. And go through and explain how business analysis does that. I use the software development life cycle and go through each of the stages, but I think that the requirements are actually about understanding the capabilities that a solution must have, And requirement management is a process. You don't just do it at the very start of the project. It's an ongoing process throughout the life cycle. These areas in detail. I haven't done that today, but I'm very happy to share those slides with anyone who's interested. And always stressing that this must be carried out before any solutions are discussed. You could lead straight to solutions with no requirements. The solution actually meet the underlying business needs. The solution over-engineered. Developers get their hands on it, they start deciding, oh yes, we can do it this way, and that might actually be what's needed. Requirements may be missed, and this leads to costly enhancements later on. And it's more difficult because what are you testing against? We had a professional team of testers who were looking to requirements to know how to structure their test plans. Oh. Recommendations. You need to be really clear about what the VA role covers and what it does not cover, i.e. testing doesn't cover, testing, project admin, support tasks, a little bit of on that to start with. Advocate for business analysis, because your passion will win people over. I'm very passionate about it, and it's important projects, and hopefully that came across in the presentations I gave. Give me as a buddy to help with settling in and ways of working, and also understanding the university. Recognise individual strengths. Melanie made this point as well. It's such a broad skill set that's required for business analysis. And people are more process orientated. Some people love getting down into kind of more data-y type projects. So I do bear that in mind when I'm allocating people. Under the Computer Society International Diploma and the related training courses, RBAs have either got that qualification or working towards it. So it's a nice way of them feeling that they're achieving recognised qualification. And I mean the courses themselves are good and very useful for work as well. So, any questions, or do you want to leave them to the end?
If you have any questions, if they could type them into the question and answer box at the bottom, then I can read them out for people. Kevin White has asked, how do you engage and promote your service within the university, and how do you receive requests?
We, each of the program managers, as I say, relate to an IT program board, and they are the ones that will come up with the projects that are currently sitting on our pipeline. So we have a project request form which will be completed generally by, it could be a program manager, it could be a stakeholder, and that's a short document really just to lodge the project in the project register, and then we would assign a manager and or BA to go and scope the project and understand a bit more about it. Prioritization is also something we're working on at the moment, so that we understand which projects we should be working on. That's a work in progress, I think, but within a board, they can prioritise their own projects. They would say, we want you to start this one now. I hope that answers that question.
Thank you. And Tim asked whether you or your team get involved in research funding applications from a technical analysis point of view.
No. We have separate research support IT team who are specialists in that area, so we don't involve in that, no.
And Kevin has asked whether requests come from schools and college, or do you just do IT-led projects?
Each of the more central projects, because each of the departments and colleges have got their own IT staff and budgets. However, some of our projects, like we're about to move email to the cloud, for example, and we're putting in a new VoIP telephony system, they cut across everybody, as student systems, I'd say. So a lot of our projects are simple, but they do touch everyone. but an individual project within a department would be funded by them. Come out of the central capital plan.
Okay. And Spencer has asked, how many projects do each BA tend to work on at any one time?
Yeah, that's a good question. Have some people have perhaps worked on 4 at a time, so that was the most, and that'd be because they're at different stages. So one might be just starting up and they're having some initial meetings, scoping it, trying to understand it. I might be closing down so that they would be just perhaps answering last-minute support questions or something on it as it was transitioning to support. That would be quite a lot, I think, to have 4. So people would be on one large project or perhaps 2 smaller ones at any one. That would be more typical.
And Ian has asked how enterprise architecture is aligned to the BA function and vice versa.
Yeah, good question. We're not that far advanced with enterprise architecture. In pockets we have. The infrastructure team has got infrastructure architecture and systems architecture moving forward. Data architecture has, and that's what I was involved in 3 years ago, that has taken off. That actually sits within software solutions, part of IT services. And we've just bought a new tool called CaseWise, which they are working on, because I think that will bring in some common practices on the data side. The area we haven't really looked at in great depth is business architecture and how all those areas are linked together.
A question from Deborah. You mentioned submitting timesheets. Was this to better cost the BA's time spent on each project, or were they contractors?
Contractors fill them in as well. So yeah, contractors would do their timesheet for their recruitment agency, but they will also fill in a timesheet to show us what they've been working on that week. So BA is working on 2 projects. They need to make sure that they put 3 days down to one and 2 days down to another, or actually we do it by hours. But we do charge, we have a day rate, and our finance team pass the charge to the Oracle projects assist at the end of each month, and that's the capital fund. So that's project managers, testers, developers, BAs, anyone working on projects actually, but end users, not stakeholders.
Okay, thank you. Do you use subject matter experts on your projects, and do you find there is a crossover with the role of the BAs?
Yes, we do. We do use subject matter experts from the business. I think that works well. I think it depends on the person sometimes, on their level of IT knowledge, but I think they know business and they know their business processes. And as Melanie said, the BA, part of their role is acting as that bridge between the more technical people in the project and the business user. So where we can get them, we love having people working with us. The hard thing is perhaps finding people sometimes who've got the time to spare.
We have a question from Simon. Have you had any problems recruiting BA staff given the cost of living in Oxford versus salary scales? But I guess also the cost, comparing the BA salaries in private sector versus HE sector. Yeah,
actually, I had a couple of successes over year 18 months, but somebody who was on a higher salary working for, I think it was PCMG, he got married, he lived in Oxford, wanted to settle more locally, and managed to entice him to come and work for us, and that's worked out really well. And then I had a contractor who worked for us last summer, and the contract finished, but I managed to entice him to take one of these fixed-term roles. So again, drop in size on the contract rate, but he enjoyed working here and really enjoyed working as part of the BA team, actually. That he did cite that as one of the things he liked. So I was rather pleased about that. Living in Oxford is not cheap. I don't live in Oxford myself. I travel in, but we have a bag. I normally manage to get one person from the recruitment drive. With that, so.
Yeah. Thank you. A question from Tim. Do you deal with PCI DSS issues.
UCISA payment plans.
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, we've just got a project about that kicking off. So we've brought a contractor, finance will run that themselves, and they've brought in an expert PCI person who's being a PM and a BA, which I think is quite a good idea on a very, very specialist project like that. We've done something similar on information security before. We brought in a specialist in that sort of technical area.
Only a question from Spencer. How long did it take you to set up the PPDG, and how did you get agreement for resourcing it?
We had, I didn't give this bit of background, but IT Services was formed in its current format in 2013, and it's 3 IT groups within the university come together to form IT Services. So we had a sort of embryonic projects group already in the area that I worked in, and it evolved into PPG. So we all had kind of a framework there, but it became a much more structured and, as I say, had this more full matrix management and split between project services and project delivery. And we do that work as well.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you everyone for your questions. I'm sorry if we seem to have lost some of the questions we had for Melanie earlier on, but if you do email them out to us, we will get them answered after the session and make sure everyone gets copies of the questions and answers. So I will pass over to our next presenter. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Right, can I have someone to see my screen? One second, just share it.
Yeah, I can see your presentation. Thank you.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Marcelina Boyle, a business analyst at the University of Liverpool. So I'm here today to talk about my experience of setting up a business analysis community of practice when I worked at the University of Manchester. Okay, so just by way of a definition, I thought this common definition of a community of practice. Communities of practice are groups of people who share a concern or a passion for something they do and learn how to do it better as they interact regularly. And I think what has already been spoken about today dovetails nicely into this presentation when it comes to the challenges, when it comes to making sure the discipline is recognized as something of value and critical in projects. And also, especially institutions, as we sort of start that revolution, if you like, for people to recognize that the role is very critical to project success.
Hi, to interrupt. We've just had a few people say they're struggling to hear you. I don't know if you
Okay.
can...
How about now? Is that better?
That's better, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so apologies to those who didn't quite hear me before. It was really just bouncing off that definition on the communities of practice. I went on to say that increasingly people are beginning to recognize that the discipline of business analysis is critical to project delivery, which may not have been the case outside of HE institutions, but it's certainly a battle that still needs to be won within HE and education establishments. So in this presentation, I'm going to cover 2 areas when it comes to my experience of setting up the business analysis community of practice in the University of Manchester when I worked there. First of all, the vision behind the COPs and the engagement strategy that was, if you like, deployed in order to get the community of practice off the ground. So the vision. So they actually set up a variety of communities of practices, and one of the aims was to establish some standards, to have that discussion and define standards as a minimum that should be deployed when a role is out there working on a project, trying to give the business what they need. Part of the vision was about defining standards where applicable, where appropriate. So to look at, if you talk about consistencies, Melanie and Sarah have talked about sort of templates and having consistent templates that the business is used to seeing and that each analyst follows. So again, we're appropriate how we can look at consistencies when exercising our discipline. About how the communities of practice can be a environment where knowledge can be shared. Again, in the previous presenters, people have talked about different ways coming from different backgrounds and different degrees of experience as well, but how they can all come together, share knowledge, bring everyone up to a minimum standard when it comes to sharing experiences and strengths and weaknesses. About how community of practice can be an environment of support for one another, a safe environment where you can declare what you do know as well as what you don't know and not be judged negatively for it. That was the overarching vision that started off the development of the communities of practice. No, it's one thing to have a vision, quite another to execute it successfully. So a project was actually set up to get the communities of practice off the ground with the usual suspects, a business sponsor, a project manager, a steering group, and a terms of reference as well. So I formed as part of that steering group in that I was the strand lead for the business analyst, there was a strand lead for the developers, for the project managers, and so on. On to do our bit to develop the communities of practice. And as the person who developed the BA one, I was told I was a bit of an evangelist, going out there, championing the cause. This is what business analyst does. This is how the community can be something of benefit. This is how we can put business analysis on them in this institution and recognize it as a key skill for successful project delivery that can be harnessed. I subset of that overarching vision and looked at establishing a vision just for the business analysis COP. Terms of reference as well, but importantly, I drafted some guiding principles, traditional 9 in number, when it comes to the business analysis community practice, guide principles that any new member joining the BA community could take on board and run with if you like. As we were starting a community from scratch, we also did some good old-fashioned KPIs that we could come back to X whatever down the line and say, okay, when it comes to our key performance indicators, do we feel we've achieved them when it comes to testing the temperature of the business analysis community of practice members' sense of confidence in applying tools and techniques, doing some of the usual tasks when it comes to business requirement solicitation, and then measure that again X months down the line to see whether the community has worked to help improve the overall confidence skill set of the members. So what tended to happen, we started off with a core group, led myself, of just 3 or 4 people. There was structuring going on. So you had people who didn't have a lot of business analysis experience, who were who were mapped into that role, as well as some new members who were recruited over the time. But each time, I, as the strand lead for the COP, would put together a little induction package where I would introduce them to the COP, introduce them to the guiding principles, a vision, and importantly, talked about the culture we wanted to encourage within our community of business analysts. And that was very much one of being supportive, being a safe environment, collaboration, helping each other become better BAs, helping to deliver projects successfully and as the business expects. An environment where we supported continual development. Sometimes one BA may go to their line manager and put in requests for some training and development. Through the community of practice, they could actually form a collective to say, as BAs, this is what we need. So one of the good things that came out of the community of practice that we put together a case for complete BA International Diploma that I mentioned earlier that the BCS runs. So everyone could have a minimum standard of knowledge and awareness when it comes to the discipline of business analysis. Recently, not only did we have buy-in from new members coming into the community, we started to experience buy-in from the wider community when it comes to recognizing the BAs as a valuable asset institution. Strategy was critical to the success of the COP. So, either a engagement plan. One of the first things was establishing an online community as well as the community that met face to face. Because as you know, we're all very busy doing our business as usual, going out there, eliciting requirements, doing our documentation, etc., etc. But having that online community meant that if you missed out on general meetings and activities and events that was happening in the physical world, so to speak, you can be part of the conversation in the website that we had. Importantly as well, when it comes to sharing knowledge and raising awareness of what the business analyst does, we had the online community open to people who weren't business analysts. They were developers, they were architects, they were testers, etc. Anyone in the institution could go into the online community and see what we were about. On that site, we had a BA profile area. So you had a picture and a quick summary of the BA, a bit about their background, how they add value, and importantly as well, what projects they were working on at the moment. Also on that online community, we had a reading list. So again, as part of that knowledge sharing and supporting each other, we built this list, which was any new article, interesting event we went to that had some follow-on white papers, etc., interesting books like the techniques and tools that a lot of people will be familiar with. It was 99 and went up to 100 plus. We add all of that, including ISBN number, on the reading list. Links to useful websites. We had a tools and techniques area as well, where we looked at our waterfall model and our project framework, and we would map our tools and techniques to when you were more likely to use them at a given period during your project framework and your project journey. There's a requirements area on that online community where people could look at slides and presentations that may have missed, and a meetings area which had summary of meetings from the general meetings that we had. So we got together face-to-face when it comes to engagement in the general meetings. These met once a month. And importantly, it wasn't just about us talking about issues, good stories, bad stories that was happening in our world of business analysis. It was an environment where we could invite guest speakers from across the institution, from various backgrounds, to talk about updates, strategically and non-strategically, operationally and service-wise, we felt was important to our area of expertise. So we always had that awareness of what was going on in the institution. So if the architects had a new framework they wanted to bring in, some new templates that they were using, including the testers, the lead architect, the lead tester would come in and give an update on what was happening. And we could have make that contribution to say, well, from a business analysis point of view, that's not going to quite work for us. And so we were, if you like, having that cross-fertilization of knowledge and experience and collaboration and building those networks outside of the community and in different disciplines. So the general meetings and guest speakers was very important, and that met once a month. We also had something which I called BA Cafes. So inspired by when I worked at Liverpool John Moore University, where they had research cafes, researchers would come in, 15-minute presentation, and people could ask questions about their research piece. I sort of nixed that, if you like, and used it for our business analysis community. So we, during our lunchtime, an hour, we would have a 10, 15-minute presentation on something in the BA world, or which we felt informed BA world, and then we would have a general discussion over lunch which applies to our real world, that real world context within the institution, the pros and cons. They were well attended, and they were also increasingly towards the end, not just open to BAs, but open to anyone who was interested in the discipline, had aspirations to go into the discipline, for example, or who felt, oh, we're going to be working with the BAs soon. Let's pop into one of these sessions to get a sense of what their world is about. Engagement also within the COP was about peer review. So again, with the different views of different experiences, we encouraged peer review. So for example, if someone was putting together a requirements log for the first time and wanted to have a sense of wording, how to frame a requirement, how to think about traceability, etc., that peer review meant they could do a shout out to everybody and say, anyone put a log example that they could show me, and so on. So that's very good as well. Shadowing was something which was exploited a lot in the workshops, for example, that I ran for the different projects that I was working on. For about half a dozen of those, I had half a dozen different BAs that came along to my workshop to just have a sense of how I sort of worked the room, so to speak, and how I elicited requirements for those workshops. So then it's about BAs working together, learning from each other, support each other, and opening ourselves up to everybody to learn what we do, putting ourselves out there and inviting people into our world. So engagement strategies, some of the options exploited when it comes to how we can make the community thrive, keep each other engaged, but also invite people into our world. Very successful. And for example, some of the feedback we have was we've really put BAs on the map. People really beginning to recognize the importance of the discipline. With the culture we fostered, we wanted to be a friendly, professional, efficient individual who was being advocates for the business, helping them to achieve their needs and get what they expect at the end of a project. And importantly, I was mentioned earlier by the speakers, being that go-between between the business and the technical people, the designers and the testers and so on. However, if you are thinking about setting up a community of practice, it's hard work. We started off when I was in Manchester with 3 or 4 of us, just a small group, and as the strand lead getting up and running, there's no going away from the fact that I did a lot of work to get the community up and running. By the time I left the University of Manchester, it had grown to 14 BAs. And but importantly, people felt that there was a consistency in the way we had our documentation, in the way we approached our work where appropriate. We had the flexibility when it comes to people trying out different tools and techniques that they either felt confident with or they just wanted to test and so on. They had a community of practice that meant that if they wanted to try something out just with a couple of members of the BA before they used it for real, if you like, on the business stakeholders, then they had that option there as well. Secondly, it can't just be on the person who is leading the COP. It's a community to sustain a community is what I've done with a famous phrase there, because it is about everybody pitching in where they can to make the community a success, knowing that everyone will get the benefits from that community when it comes to knowledge sharing, supporting each other, and being in a safe environment where you can say, actually, I don't feel confident in doing that technique or running a workshop or producing that documentation, knowing there's someone who you can go to and say, well, here's some examples, or you can come to me for a while. So, first step is, bring this to a close, is why do you need a COP is the first question. So it's about saying, well, is there a problem with the way business analysis is perceived, how business analysts are perceived, and so on, and thinking about if you do need a COP, how you're going to sustain it with a good engagement strategy and an environment where people are knowledge sharing and learning, and thinking about what techniques of communication do you want to use to keep the COP current, thriving, and maturing over time, so it has some longevity to it. Or you may ask, you know what, we just need a COP just to get things up and running and to put the discipline on the map, and then it can go away. So it's again whether you need a COP forever as well. That's the thing to consider. And on the quote from one of the BAs who was my colleagues at the time when we started off, and I did how to say, tell me what you want from this COP. And I think this quote encapsulates it in 3 parts here. I am hoping that the BA COP can provide access to new knowledge and will enable the group to use one another as sounding boards and teach each other. group should give us all a sense of common purpose and foster frank and supportive discussions of real problems. And finally, I hope it will enable expertise to be transferred across the group. And I thought that encapsulates really the experience of setting up the community of practice at the University of Manchester, the hopes and aspirations that was ultimately fulfilled by the time I'd left that university. That's it from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I have a question from Tim. As part of your online community site, did you provide case studies?
I'm going to do video 1 second. As well. By the time sort of we got the COP up and running, then yes, I was asked to put together a case study paper on what I did to get it up and running actually. So in there it has the communication and engagement strategy, the guiding principles, what we did to start the ball rolling, and that was shared with the other communities of practice at the University of Manchester who were looking for, if you like, tips on how to get theirs up and running and to consider how much work would need to go into it. Bearing in mind every community of practice has their own dynamic, as you can imagine. A developer one is very different from a BA one, and a BA one is very different from a PM one, and so on.
A question from Spencer. I don't know whether you'll be able to answer this. Has anyone used Microsoft Project Online and SharePoint for Office 365 to create project websites, to have a central repository for all project documents, have a project wiki and share project updates and plans, etc.?
That's an interesting question, because in University of Liverpool we are looking at Office 365 to be our, if you like, single source of truth that brings all the project collaboration and materials and templates and standardization all in the one place. So that's something that we are looking at and teasing out, and at the moment we are looking at the processes outside of Office 365 which would then inform Office 365. So we're fine-tuning our processes, and then if you like, the end product will be an Office 365 environment. In the University of Manchester, yes, they had that. Used SharePoint for the community of practice online community, but also to manage the project framework. Again, they used SharePoint and developed an environment where once the project was set up, it had a project ID, it had the templates that's required for the framework as a minimum, and it had the flexibility of an environment where you could also put all the other supporting materials, not official templates, if you like, but are generated when you're, if you like, knee-deep in project world.
Thank you. Has anybody else got any questions before we move on to the final session? Okay, I think that's it. But as I said, any questions, please feel free to email me after the event, and I will make sure we get them all answered and sent out to the whole group. So don't worry if any of your questions have been missed. So thank you very much. I will and just present the last section. So during the year, I did email out to the PCMG mailing list a survey to assess the maturity of the business analysis sector in HE. So I just thought I'd quickly walk through some of the responses for you, because it just gives you a sense of how your institution compares to the rest of the sector. So I have 50 responses to the survey out of the 160 HEs in the UK. So it's a representation for the sector, but in terms of survey responses, that was quite a good response rate. Everyone that replied to the survey undertakes some type of BA activity within their institution, and 65% of those have a dedicated BA function. So that shows us that this analysis is definitely something that universities are paying attention to. Next, how many BAs institutions had. So B teams are still relatively quite small, most of them being 5 or under. But we have some slightly larger teams and you'll probably find as the business analysis section matures, you'll get more business analysts employed within your institution. For a number of years, the BA team has been established. Again, that was quite low. I think it's still quite a new thing to the HE sector. We've probably been undertaking business analysis activities for quite a long time, but we've probably not had the dedicated BA team established. So that's something we're quite new at. And I think that's something that shows the benefits of sharing knowledge and experience as a sector and coming together. So the BA team sit within a programme management office. This was more or less a 50-50 split. We find that most BA teams sit within IT services with 70% of respondents saying that's where they were located. But even we're sat in IT, we don't just get involved in IT projects, we do get involved in other things. Again, about 50% of respondents said that they were involved in projects that outside of non-IT change projects. I do work with the university's senior management team, so about a 50-50 split, with 53% of us working with the management team, so we're getting involved with leaders, making sure they're involved in our work as stakeholders. It's fine that 75% of the BAs aren't getting involved in the strategy setting, so that's showing us that we're not involved in the setting of strategy and all the work that goes into that. We're involved in post-strategy setting and implementation. So all the projects and streams of work that come out of strategy being set. Committee level for 2016 came in at level 3. Level 2, had quite a few responses, but level 3 was the clear winner. So what level 3 mean? And you're probably able to read this, but I can email you out the maturity model I used afterwards. But level 3, it's a single BA function that exists within IT services. We work on IT projects, but we work on non-IT change projects as well, but the majority are still IT projects. We're involved in the strategy setting process, but we do have general knowledge of management processes. So as a community, we're still quite new, but we are building ourselves and maturing, and I think that the more work we can do together, obviously improve things for everybody. So what do you think the next steps are? The UCISA group, the Project Change and Management Group, supports the business analysis community, and that falls under our umbrella. So I'd like people to email over ideas for future events they'd like, webinars, meetings, training courses we might be able to offer. Just email us all your ideas. You can email me direct or email via the mailing list, and that we can come together as a committee and try and support the community better and promote a community of practice of sharing of knowledge and experience. So I'm just going to come out of my presentation just to see if there are any further questions and answers. I don't think there are any new questions and answers at the minute. So thank you again for logging in. Apologies for a few of the technical hiccups. As I said, we're most quite new to presenting webinars, so thank you for being with us. Hopefully in the future we'll be able to do some more of these, and we will get a slicker at the whole process. Do email me any questions that you had that we weren't able to answer today. And I think that's probably a wrap for everybody. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Bye.